Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about some fall book recommendations. So I have a list of some of my favorite books that I like to read in the fall, or that I have read in the fall, or that maybe I read in a different time of year, but I thought they would make great fall reads because they're either very atmospheric and they really give you that feeling of like it's starting to get chilly and the leaves are starting to fall and sort of almost like even a little bit of a melancholy feel. So these books are some of my favorites that remind me of fall and that really put me in that fall mood, so I hope that you like them too. The first book I want to talk about today is An Enchantment of Ravens. This is by Margaret Rogerson. This book came out a few years ago and it was very hyped on BookTube at the time, and I still really love it for a fall read. I feel like it really captures all of the feelings that I want when I think about a book I want to read in the fall. And it's really just a sweet, lovely book, and it's pretty short. It's really interesting. It's just great. So this book is about Isabel, who is a human, and she's an artist, and she paints portraits of the Fae. They live on like a human town that's bordering the Fae world, and a lot of the Fae nobility come to her to have their portraits painted because something that the Fae can't do is create art. So they can't like cook or make crafts or make art. If they do, they crumble to dust. So she's very sought after among the Fae, and one day the Autumn Prince named Rook comes to her and wants her to paint his portrait. And so she does, but what she does in the painting is she paints him with a look of human sorrow, which is forbidden among the Fae. They're not allowed to have human emotions or human feelings. So he then whisks her off to his world, his kingdom, where she can have a trial to see what her punishment will be for that. And it's also a very soft love story between the two of them. It's really beautiful to see Rook sort of start to feel those human emotions that Isabel has, and to see her bring those out in him. It's really great. I feel like this is a more lyrical version of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it's just really lovely, and the way that they depict like the autumn world of the fairies, and it's very visual and just beautiful and really gives you those fall feelings. And the next book on my list is none other than A Court of Thorns and Roses. This cover, you guys, I just really want to show you the cover because look at how beautiful. I actually don't know who made these covers. I get asked that quite a lot anytime I share them. But I found these from my Instagram friend Ren, who was getting rid of them because she didn't want them anymore. And I was like, I want them. I will have them. Please, can I have them? And so, aren't they so pretty? Okay, so if you haven't heard about this book, you're probably new to BookTube or you've been sleeping for a bit, but I picked this book for a fall read because, like An Enchantment of Ravens, I feel like this book does a really good job of creating a very atmospheric, nature, woodsy, fall type of feel. And I think that part of the reason that I like that feeling with fall is like because it has to do with like nature is dying, things are changing, the seasons are changing, and I feel like this book does that really well. So briefly, if you haven't heard about this book, this is by Sarah J. Maas. It's extremely popular. I really like this book. I know a lot of people don't, but I think it's, if it was a standalone and in its own way, I think it's really well done and I really liked it. So this book is about Feyre, who is a poor common girl, and she is tasked with feeding her family and taking care of them. So one day she goes into the woods and she shoots a wolf with a bow and arrow. Now the human world also lives on the border of the fairy world at this time, and there's a lot of tension because fairies are very dangerous to humans. So she kills the wolf. Little does she know that he's actually not a wolf. He is a fairy soldier, sentinel, part of the royal guard. And so later that night, the Fae Lord of that kingdom comes to get Feyre and bring her back to his kingdom for repayment for her crimes. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, very loosely inspired. I guess I would say it's more inspired than a retelling. And it's really just a fun, atmospheric read. I really liked it. I thought it was great. This series is wonderful. I love it. I love Sarah J. Maas, so if you haven't read this, pick this up this fall. And the next book on my list is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This is one of her young adult books, and I feel like this is a really good fall read because it also has a lot of those very atmospheric sort of season-changing type of vibes, even though none of this is really in nature. I think this is a very fast read, it's a very engaging read, and it's very unique too. So this book is about Kate and August. So they're both children of, I guess, rulers or leading figures in this city that's sort of divided and has a lot of tension between these two groups. Kate's father is very ruthless and uses a lot of power in a bad way to sort of run his town. August is the child of a very peaceful ruler who is trying to help the innocent people and really use the goodness of his heart to bring about peace. So the interesting thing about this world is that there are monsters in this world that are literally born through acts of violence. So anytime a violent act is done, a monster is created. And I thought that was such a cool concept, and it's really beautifully done in this book. So August is one of the monsters, and he really has this pure, loving heart where he wants to help people instead of hurt them. He doesn't want to be the monster. And Kate, on the other hand, really kind of has that ruthless aspect that she's been raised with her dad. So when they come together and meet, it's really interesting to see their personalities sort of conflict and see a relationship develop between the two of them. I love this book. I think it's a great fall read. Definitely recommend it. And the next book on my list is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This is my all-time favorite Maggie Stiefvater book. I adore Maggie's writings. I've read all of her books. She is another one of my favorite writers. I think she has the rare gift of being a very lyrically beautiful writer, but also creating engaging plots that you want to keep reading, and also creating unique, likable characters that are complex and just strange and lovely and wonderful, and she does all of that in this book especially. So this book follows Puck, who is a young girl, and Sean, a young man, who they're both involved on this little island town with the Scorpio races that happen every year. And the Scorpio races is basically a very fast, action-paced race where you catch a murderous water horse from the sea and you ride it to the finish line, and whoever gets there first wins. A lot of people die in this race. It's a very big tradition in the town, and it sounds a little weird when you say murderous water horse, and I admit when Maggie first came out with this book, I was wondering how she was going to pull it off, but of course she does. It's beautiful. It's so compelling. The writing in this is so delicious. Like, the way that she describes the way the town feels and the food that they eat and even the weather, and it's just such a fun, escapist read. I totally loved it. I haven't read this in a few years. I probably need to reread it again this year because it's so, so good. And the next book on my list is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This book is a good fall recommendation because it deals a lot with the university. It has that very dark academia type of feel. It is just very, again, just atmospheric. Like, the feeling that Leigh creates in this story of the dark, foreboding aspect of the university and the mysterious things that are happening there is just so perfectly done. I loved this book. I know this book has quite a lot of mixed reviews. It does come with some pretty heavy trigger warnings, a few of which are sexual abuse and drug abuse, death of family members, but it is powerful, and it is, honestly, the vibe I got from this was so strongly feminist that I loved it. I love Alex is our main character. She's an amazingly strong woman, and I just loved it. So this book follows Alex Stern, who is a very unlikely freshman student at Yale University. She is the only survivor of a very horrific multiple homicide that has not been solved, and she's approached by someone from Yale who comes to offer her a full ride scholarship if she will be in charge of sort of watching what is happening with the Yale underground societies. This has some really unique, strange magic involved in it. The characters are both unlikable and likable. They're very relatable. They're very complex. This is just, honestly, I feel like a stunning book. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I can understand why some people don't like it. It's really not a light read, but it's so, so good and absolutely has fall, sort of, not really creepy, but definitely like that foreboding sense that you get sometimes, like when a big storm is coming that happens in fall. I just loved it. Totally great dark academia read. The next book on my list is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This was Laini Taylor, well, this wasn't her debut. This was her first young adult book that she published. It's quite old. I believe this was published in 2011, 2012. And she is more commonly known for her Strange the Dreamer duology, which is more recent. But this book is my favorite of hers. It's such an amazingly creative and gorgeous book. So this book follows Karou, who is a Prague art student. So it's set in Prague, which is really unique and really cool because I don't know of very many YA books that we have with that type of setting. She has blue hair, she lives with a family of monsters, and she is kind of trying to find her place in the world. And then we also have Akiva, who is this really dark, brooding guy who's kind of following her around. They lock eyes in some alley street, and I'm not going to reveal anything else that happens because I feel like so much of the beauty of this book is knowing not a lot of that magical world. But it's basically Karou and Akiva meet up, sparks fly, and there's an overarching magical mystery that you're trying to solve that is just stunning, beautiful, so well done. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I just loved it. I think it was perfect. And I think you should read it. And the next book on my list is Middle Game by Shannon Maguire. This book is very interesting, and it's a little bit hard to summarize, but it's such a oddly compelling read. I just read this book. It took me a while, but when I wasn't reading it, I was constantly thinking about it, and it gives off a lot of those dark, foreboding, mysterious vibes. Not really creepy, scary for October, but definitely a fall, autumn type of read. So this book is about Roger and Dodger, and they are twins. And Roger is great with numbers, Dodger is great with words. Dodger's the girl, Roger's a boy. They're not human, but they're not quite gods either. And their creator's name is Reed, and he's an alchemist. And he is trying to raise them to be the highest power there is. He's trying to raise them to be gods, and eventually he wants to do that so he can take that power from them. A lot of this book deals with the individual lives of Roger and Dodger as children. You follow them as children and as they grow up. And watching their very unique twin relationship, it was honestly, it was so good. It was a little bit heartbreaking. It was a little bit melancholy, but it was really, really beautiful and just so well done. I feel like this is another one of those books where the writing is just delicious and so interesting and just a really great, unique read. I absolutely loved it. And the last book on my list is BookTube's Darling, and I'm sure almost everyone on here has read it, but I feel like it is the perfect atmospheric fall read, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I gotta be honest with you, this is not necessarily one of my all-time favorite books, as it is for so many, but I can appreciate it, and I think that it gives a wonderfully rich feeling of fall. There's just something about like magical books like this is magical realism, that really kind of appeal to me when the weather gets cold and it starts to kind of approach spooky season, that I just really, really love. So if you don't know what this book is about, this book is basically about a traveling magical circus. They're in like black and white striped tents, and it's just absolutely a decadent circus. Like, it's not the type of circus that you would think like Barnum and Bailey's or even the circus in A Greatest Showman. This is elaborate, fantastical, elegant, and just a very decadent circus. Something I really like about this book actually is how they describe the food that they offer. I love food descriptions in books, and this one was really unique and just so appealing to me, and I just loved it. And so the basic premise of this book is we have Celia and Marco, and they're sort of magician apprentices. They're training to be magicians, and their mentors or teachers are engaged in this centuries-old magical competition that they've put these two in that they don't even know about. And there can only be one survivor in that magical competition. But lo and behold, Marco and Celia meet and fall in love, and it's very complex. There's a lot of character dynamics. It's really a lovely, beautiful book. It reminds me a lot of, the feeling almost reminds me of that movie, The Prestige, if you've ever seen that. It kind of gives off that type of a feel. It's just really beautiful, and if you haven't read this book, you really should, because it's definitely worth the read. Okay, everybody, that is a few of my favorite fall recommendations for a really atmospheric, melancholy, mysterious type of book. Let me know if you've read any of these and which ones you liked, or if you didn't like these, and also if you have any that you would add to this list. Something I didn't include was a romance novel, because honestly, I don't really have a great atmospheric romance novel for fall, so I would really like that. So if you know of something like that, leave it in the comments so I can check it out. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.